Aloha, everyone. I'm Corey Rosenlee, HSTA's president. Thank you for joining us for today's live briefing dealing with the ongoing response to dealing with the coronavirus. This is our third live presentation. It's on Facebook Live and on YouTube for those of you watching it. If during this presentation there are questions that you have, please put them into the comment section. There's a lot that's happened since our last briefing. We want to do the best as we can to update you and make sure that we communicate with our members as much as possible. I also understand that there are people that are of the community that have a lot of questions too, and you're welcome as well to listen to this presentation. Today joining me is Andrea Eshelman, HSTA's Deputy Executive Director and our Chief Negotiator. I'd also like to recognize our communication staff, Kyoki Kerr, Chris Schubert, and Terry Inafuku. Responding to our questions will be HSTA's Vice President Osa Tui and Logan Okita, will be our Secretary Treasurer, who will be looking at all the comments that you're putting down, and later on we'll have a chance to listen and to address some of those questions. I also want to thank Honolulu Chapter President Inga Park and Vicki Watson, who are providing our sign language interpretation as well today. So a lot's happened, and we want to be able to address all of your questions. I also want to thank all of the members that have been helping out, including our state leadership team, our board of directors, our chapter presidents, our bargaining team, our negotiations committee, and our staff that's been doing a hard job trying to make sure you answer them. So let's go into some of these, and I'm going to pass it on to Andy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Similarly to our March 20th briefing, we're going to review the latest updates that and share what we know of as is today, Sunday, March 29th at 4 p.m. We encourage you all to make sure that you are signed up on our website to receive email updates. If you haven't done that yet, you can easily get the instructions to sign up for our email by going to bit.ly/HSTA email for instructions. Please continue to check our website for the latest information on our COVID response. We will note that just recently we went through the process of reformatting and moving things around on our webpage related to COVID because the information was becoming so large. And so there will always be the main page, which is bit.ly/HSTA COVID. You can also get to it by navigating to hsta.org. We have also broken out an FAQ page, as well as a page that just has all the DOE memos related to our COVID response, as well as an archive page. So you can go back and look at previous updates that we pushed out. Immediately following the overview, as Corey indicated, we're going to answer questions. We do want to warn you in advance. There's a possibility we don't necessarily have the answer. Last time we had a number of questions that stumped us, and we added it to our list, and we keep following up as we can. So Corey, why don't you start?
Okay. First of all, I just want to say thank you. We all appreciate the hard work that you're doing. We know that this is a stressful time for both you and your family. And, I've been watching some amazing things that you teachers have been doing. You've been posting YouTube videos of you reading stories, trying to get your lessons ready, and you guys have been doing an amazing job. There are certain philosophies that HSTA has had during this time. Number one is the biggest priority we have is taking care of our keiki. That is why HSTA did not propose that we start opening our schools for April 6th for our teachers and April 7th for our students. We wanted to make sure that our schools had a healthy and safe environment before we opened our schools. The other big philosophy we've had during this time is how do we make sure that we make our education relevant and important for our students during this very difficult time. And to do this, one of our priorities is making sure that we can provide education while at the same time being cognizant of the equity that we had to provide. That is why, working with the Department of Education, we try to make sure that it was learning and enrichment activities, but that no student should be punished for not being able to do the assignments. Now, during this entire process, the key word is flexible. HSTA has been in constant communication with the Department of Education to try to make this work. We've been working with them in details, and some of those details we're going to be talking about as we're going along. But let's go into some of these specific things. I'll pass it back to Andy.
So this past week, all of you sat through a number of different planning meetings. You spent some time as an educator determining what will be your best next steps. And so we got through that week, and I know it was a really challenging week, even though it was technically only a 4-day week. In particular, we're continuing to get questions about what am I supposed to do? What am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? And so we're going to try to give some frame to the expectations as we go forward. So what happens between now and the end of the closures? You're going to continue to work from a remote location. For most of you, that's going to be your home. It may be your parents' home or perhaps a sibling's home if you're staying with them during the school closures. You are expected to work within the scope of your classroom or non-classroom position requirements. And during this time, you're going to be implementing those remote enrichment opportunities, right? So learning and enrichment is the key. Those opportunities are to continue to maintain or enrich what students have already learned prior to spring break. You are through this process empowered to use your professional training and judgment to determine the scope and method to provide appropriate learning and enrichment activities. And I'm going to have my staff put up the specific language in the agreement that we signed with the superintendent. And so you'll see here that classroom teachers are to assess their students' essential educational needs in alignment with the school's instructional plan and determine the learning and enrichment activities needed for the students for the duration of the closures. And then you'll note that it also mentions that you have the freedom to use your professional training and judgment to determine the scope and method utilized to provide those activities in alignment with your school's instructional plan. We're going to keep coming back to this language over and over again. And this should be really the core of what you look to as you get questions about, should I do this? Should I not do this? Can I do this? Can I not do this? Similar frame for our non-classroom teachers. The only difference is that you're going to be working with whoever your direct supervisor is. Usually that's your principal or administrator to see what you need to do for related to your essential functions. Throughout this time, you also need to know that the rule is still the same around reporting to work sites. You are not to be directed to report to a work site. The schools are closed. However, we have received questions from people who are asking, can I go to school? I need to do something such as pick up materials, drop off packets, make some copies to deliver to my students. We're strongly discouraging folks from being out and about, as only really those folks who are considered essential at the work sites should be at school. Those would be folks like our custodians who are doing an awesome job helping prepare the schools for our return, or our cafeteria workers who are preparing the grab and go meals. So ideally, because you can do some of that work off campus, you should be at home. With that being said, if you need to go to campus and you are comfortable doing so, please discuss that with your administrator. They should be talking to you about protocols that need to be put in place to ensure that you understand the duration you can be on campus, the locations on campus that you can go to, and the ways that you should be limiting interaction with others. And also the methods that they're going to do to ensure that all services are properly cleaned after. This is especially important for teachers who are going in and out of our Xerox or our copy rooms or work rooms, because you're going to potentially have multiple people going in at different times. In addition, we've had a few people who are asking if they can just go to campus and work. You should not be asking to go to campus and work in your room all day. That is not something that we are in support of. We want to make sure that folks are only on campus because it's absolutely essential for you to accomplish a specific task, and that's why you're there. Corey, why don't you talk a little bit more about what they're going to do to provide learning and enrichment materials?
So what we want to do is we've been getting a lot of questions from our members, and we want to try to answer them as best as we can. So one of the questions we've been getting is, do classroom teachers have to provide learning and enrichment materials to students while the school is closed? And the answer is yes. Okay, you have to provide learning activities to maintain and enrich what has been taught. Now, this can be done in a variety of ways. This can be done through online learning. It can be done through packets. It can be done with a combination of both. But what you decide to do is up to you. You have the freedom to use your training and judgment to determine what will be appropriate. And like I said before, many of you have been doing great activities already working on them. Okay. The next question is, should I be grading students' learning enrichment work? Are formal assessments supposed to be done? Is this formal instruction for fourth quarter grades? And to be very clear, there is no formal instruction being delivered for fourth quarter grades. However, you can do things to potentially help students with their third quarter grades and use that to boost that as well. You have the flexibility to decide what is best for your students. Now, a lot of the questions specifically we've been getting about is seniors. What about graduation requirements? Well, it was posted on Friday that the Board of Education will be having a meeting on April 2nd. And one of these things that will be happening on April 2nd is looking at specifically this. BOE Policy 102-15, which is high school graduation requirements and commencement. And what the Department of Education currently is seeking is flexibility on awarding a diploma or certificate to graduating seniors based on approval from individual school administrators. There are approximately 10,000 students who are eligible to earn a diploma this year. Right now, we do not know about the specific requirements, so we're looking at the Board of Education meeting just like you to see what that is. But during this time, we are asking teachers, not just those working with seniors, but working with all students, to try to find ways to be able to help those students get their grades done, and for seniors trying to help them graduate. And that's up to you whether you want to be able to help them graduate and help them with their credit requirements as well. Okay, Andy?
The other question that we've gotten a lot of feedback on or issue is related to third quarter report cards. So when we last did a Facebook Live with you folks a little over a week ago, we didn't have the answer to the question of when are report cards due. Early this past week, HSTA and the DOE met and had various discussions and came to agreement that report cards could be due no earlier than the end of the workday on April 1st. Very shortly thereafter, the superintendent pushed out a memo indicating that that's when report cards as well as progress reports for special ed students was due. Some teachers immediately were upset. They wanted to have more time to input grades, especially at the elementary levels where they worry that the time allotted was not enough. We want you to know that the reason why that date was selected was related directly to what Corey spoke to about graduation. So they're trying to assess right now what kids need to have credit for graduation, where are those grades at, and do we need to do anything to help those kids meet whatever requirements are needed to graduate. And so while the April 1st date was selected, we then went back to the department and had further discussions on Friday, and we were told that extensions can be provided on a school-by-school basis. And administrators were notified of that option on Friday. And so if teachers on your campus feel there's a need for more time, and I know there are a handful of campuses, to my knowledge, they're all elementary, that have had these discussions already, please go talk to your principal about adjusting that deadline, and there shouldn't be a problem with that. In addition, specific to our multi-track teachers, there was a secondary memo that came out related to third quarter grades on Friday. That is posted on our website. It's on the DOE site as well, that their third quarter report cards will be due on Monday, April 6th. Throughout all of this conversation related to report cards, please know that, again, it is our understanding that all bargaining unit 5 employees, regardless if you're a registrar, a counselor, a classroom teacher, what have you, you should not be required to report to school to do any work related to report card submission. If you have specific questions or concerns about how you're going to submit your grades remotely, please talk to your principal and get guidance from them. Of note, we also know that there are teachers who were concerned that they had provided or had announced prior to spring break that they would give kids extended time to finish work from third quarter. That might be including quizzes or tests that they haven't been taken, or perhaps some sort of other requirements. We encourage you to provide those students those opportunities within the next month or so, and please know that you can always go back in and adjust grades later at a later time if necessary. Some teachers express frustration that they left materials in their classrooms and that is needed for third quarter. And in that discussion, they are not comfortable asking or going back on campus to get those materials. And so we just want to recognize that these are unprecedented times, and you may have to make a decision to not include something on a final third quarter grade, or possibly you may not give as many comments on a report card because you just don't have the time to get all of that done by Wednesday. For elementary teachers in particular, they have expressed concerns over the weekend about having to, quote unquote, sign the report card, because that's something specific to the elementary folks. You should talk with your administration. My understanding, or our understanding, is that right now schools are working out how they're going to handle that. I've heard a variety of different solutions. Some are just saying, just don't worry about signing it. Some are having the principals sign on behalf of the teachers. Some schools are talking about using a school stamp to stamp the report cards and get them out. Some are talking about mailing them back and forth. Whatever that is, you need to talk with your administration. Obviously, we're in an unprecedented situation and we need to remain flexible. But however, under no circumstances should any teacher be directed to report back to school just to sign report cards. The other area that we're getting questions on is related to platforms, online platforms that you are using to deliver the learning and enrichment. And the question of, do I have to use a specific platform to provide my learning and enrichment? The answer goes back to that language in section 4 that we put up earlier. You have the freedom to use your professional training and judgment to determine the scope and method utilized in providing the learning and enrichment activities. However, we want to recognize that some schools have indicated to teachers and parents that the primary platform the school will use for getting information out is X, whatever that is. For many schools, that is Google Classroom, and that's because the schools have been using that already. If you have problem with a particular platform that the school is suggesting that you should use, or perhaps your coursework just doesn't match up well with that platform, you should have the flexibility to adjust as needed. And so if there's some other method that you want to utilize, please talk with your administration. You should have that opportunity to make those adjustments and use something different. We will also note that we need to all be thoughtful regarding the parents and the students. The fewer systems and changes that we put out there for them, the easier it is for them to keep up with all of this change. So keep that in mind. Make sure your students and your parents clearly know where you're going to be reaching them, whether it's through email, whether it's through announcements on Google Classroom, or perhaps it's through some other mechanism that you already utilize. And for many of our teachers, they already have these communication systems in place, and they're using things such as Class Dojo or Remind to communicate with parents and students. Related to the platforms, we have gotten a specific question about video conferencing. And we have had a few people report that they've been told that they can only use WebEx for video conferencing. We had a conversation with the department late last week, and we confirmed that there's no specific directive out that you must use WebEx. And so please make sure that if you do have some sort of directive around that, to comply with that directive. Don't be insubordinate, but push that information up to us through your HSTA reps and or your UNISERV, and then we'll work to try and get clarification. It's our understanding right now that there is no express requirement that you must use WebEx for video conferencing. Regardless of what platform you're using, please make sure you engage in best practices, right? So you want to make sure that you're not just broadcasting publicly students' images. You want to make sure that you're not publicly posting your meeting room information that might have some stranger come into your meeting room. You want to make sure you're controlling who can share content in your meeting rooms and who can come in and out of those meeting rooms. We want to make sure also that we're thoughtful about the fact that some of our students don't have those resources, or they're sharing resources with their siblings. And so be thoughtful about that as you work through the ways that you're going to provide learning and enrichment activities. Okay, Corey, would you like to talk about communication with parents and students?
Okay, so one of the questions we've been getting is, am I still expected to communicate with students and parents during the school closure? And the answer is yes. Still communicate with them, and that can be done through email, that can be done through your phone. Some teachers have expressed concern about using their personal phones, so there's a couple suggestions we have for that. Number one is, if you are concerned, there are blocking software so that people don't see your number if that's a concern. There's also software out there such as Google Voice that can help you be able to communicate with parents and students. And if that doesn't work, and we'll be saying this a lot, if there are barriers that just make it too difficult to do something, work with your administrator, work with your counselors to find a way to still to be able to communicate. Now, Another question we've been getting a lot is about special education. And for a long time, we had to say we didn't have specific information, but now the Department of Education has put out recommendations. And I want to read to you what it says, okay? So on Friday, they put out a memo, okay, and this is what it says about programming and timelines for students with special needs during school closures. In regards to IEP deadlines and meetings, the Hawaii Department of Education says teachers should make a good faith effort to meet timeline requirements and attempt to hold virtual meetings if possible. It is also our understanding that teachers should provide enrichment activities to students with special needs and make accommodations where possible. The memo also contains specific guidance related to the U.S. Department of Education's guidance about, the memo also contains specific guidance related to virtual IEP meetings and timelines, and also follows the latest U.S. Department of Education guidance on March 21st. Furthermore, the memo links to a series of resources for teachers. It includes resources for SpEd, English learners, counselors, homeless, home hospital instruction, and supports for trauma and social emotional issues. The website is, and we'll put this up here, bit.ly HIDOE resource site. Now, as a note, you have to log in from your school Google account to get access. The Hawaii Department of Education also released a memo Friday related to school student support services such as therapists, PAs, and others. And for those of you, I want to take this time. Look, we have a lot of people that are still working in our schools trying to help people out. A big shout out goes to our custodians and to our cafeteria workers who are doing the best they can during these times and still trying to serve meals. So I want to take this opportunity to thank them for the great jobs that they're doing. Since this applies to other bargaining units, we wanted to make sure that we make a note of this because we know that many of our members work with these people on a day-to-day work. Next question we've been getting, and there's been a lot of rumors out there, and we want to sort of knock down some of these rumors. One of the rumors is talking about an extended school year. And to be very clear, the Department of Education has not suggested about lengthening the school year, and it's not something that HSTA would advocate for either. There are a lot of concerns about trying to extend the school year. Part of the problem is just cost. It would cost millions of dollars to do this. There's also dealing with multi-track schools and also dealing with the multiple dealing with students and teachers and the circumstances that they have. So just to be clear, this is just a rumor and no one is suggesting this right now. Okay, Andy?
Okay. There's a few other issues that we are also working on that folks have asked us. And one of those is teacher assignment and transfer process. So you may have seen, we pushed out earlier this week that a new updated memo around the timelines for teacher assignment and transfer came out. It's pushed back the process by a few weeks. Excuse me. And so if you have questions about that, please check out that memo. It's on the DOE site as well as ours. We also had folks asking about reclassification. We were able to get the department to push back the reclassification deadline from March 30th to April 30th. Again, there's a copy of that memo on our website. That's for folks who are seeking to reclassify this semester with professional development courses. And then related to professional development courses, we had questions about what happens to those courses, especially those of you taking courses where there is something to do with students and instruction and some sort of evidence that you need to provide for that course. The DOE has sent out direction to the professional development instructors. And so those instructors are to work with their course sponsor and to determine the modifications that need to be made for their course. The instructors will need to present those to the DOE, and then there will be a discussion about meeting those requirements to make sure that the reclassification credit can still be awarded. All of our HSTA related PD courses have already had that discussion happen with our instructors, and so they're discussing that with the DOE right now. If you haven't received any information from your course instructor, please reach out to that person and ask them what the latest information is and if they're going to make any modification to the course. So I think, Corey, those are the major updates. So perhaps we can go on to our questions. We have Logan online who is going to help provide us with our questions that have come up. For those of you that are on, I would suggest, if you haven't had a chance already, if you can share this live presentation on your Facebook, that would be great to make sure other people are able to see it. And just a reminder, if you have questions, please type those into the chat feature, and we're going to try to get to as many as we can. And if you don't see an answer to your question, or perhaps you're listening to this later on the archive, we'll be able to have a way for you to contact us by going to our website and using our contact page, and you can send questions that way, or you can also email your Uniserv to ask for support. So I'm going to ask Logan if we have any questions.
Yes, we have many questions.
Okay.
One of our first questions is, what are our contract hours during this time? 7:45 to 2:45, 8 to 3?
So your contract hours are going to be 7 hours a day. And I would say generally you're going to use the same bell schedule time, start and stop, as you normally would, but we have not gotten into anything specific with the department about that. But you are supposed to work a 7-hour day. That is the contract time each day.
The next question has to do with the telework agreement. Was HSTA allowed to view this before it was sent out to teachers? And is there something that we're supposed to sign?
Okay, so there was a lot of confusion 2 weeks ago about the telework agreement. So initially, there was discussion with the department about how, at the time, when we were talking during the regular spring break, the 12-month teachers could potentially work from home. Because remember, this is before the closures were announced. Subsequent to that, a week ago Friday, we negotiated and worked out with the superintendent that letter that you saw that has gone out. And so that is what teachers should be following. The department has put out multiple notices to administrators. There should be no bargaining unit 5 teacher that should be asked to sign a telework agreement. Telework agreements are for other bargaining units. We are following the letter that the superintendent put out regarding our bargaining unit 5. So again, no one should be signing off on telework agreements that are bargaining unit 5. We follow the agreement that we already have in place.
Okay.
And I think we're
jump in
transitioning.
for one moment.
Yeah.
One of the things we're asking for people is, if you can, please share this Facebook Live, so that we want to try to reach out to as many members as possible and to make sure that as many people are informed. So if you can just click on the share button, that'd be great. Okay, Logan, with the next question then.
There's several questions about the difference between enrichment and not being able to present new curriculum. Can we expand on that? And some schools were told that they would be starting new curriculum after April 6th, and our charter schools held to this also.
So with this question, it's up to your professional judgment the best way to do enrichment and learning activities for your students. In discussions with the Department of Education, one of the things that was very important is what were the essential knowledge and skills that they would need to go to the next grade level or to the next course. The department has also suggested to try to give things that they already learned. Okay, but at the end of the day, a lot of this deals with this: what, in your professional judgment, is the best thing for your students? So it can be new material. It could also be just going back to what they've already learned. The whole idea, though, around all of this is that it's not graded, because the idea is we didn't want students to be punished if it was too difficult, or they didn't have the materials, or they couldn't get the help. But to be very clear, it's up to your professional judgment.
I want to clarify further Corey's comment about the grading. So right now, specific for fourth quarter, we are getting a number of reports that principals are telling teachers that they're going to start instruction for fourth quarter and they are going to grade for fourth quarter. That is not what is supposed to be happening. However, we know that there are teachers who may have third quarter related things that they need to grade, and they are free to give kids the option to raise their grade for third quarter if that's something that needs to be discussed. But right now, we know of no plans to do formalized instruction for fourth quarter grades during the school closures. Specific to charter schools, the superintendent has closed all public schools. That includes charter schools, and they are all doing the same thing. The only way that charter schools can open is if they have that conversation with the commission and the superintendent, and they would have to be able to use a methodology of instruction that there was equity. And again, we're concerned about that equity, because if they're not already using whatever platform and the resources aren't there for their teachers as well as their students, they're not going to be able to deliver an educational program and formalized instruction in an equitable manner. And so as of right now, we know of no charter schools that have been given permission to open back up during the closure time because of that equity issue. Okay.
Okay, next question.
Yes. Are we required to go to campus to hold a phone conference for a 504 or IEP meeting with teachers and admin?
No.
No. You cannot be required to go on campus. The IEP meetings and any SpEd related services if you can do it virtually, that's how you're supposed to do it. If you cannot do it virtually, no principal can require you to go to campus.
And we would encourage you to read the full memo that was put out last Friday. I also want to, I'm sorry, I wanted to thank, besides, I know Logan's answering questions, but we also have OSA online apparently answering in the comments, as well as Lisa Morrison from Maui and Kelly from Leeward chapter. And so they're all helping as well. So thanks to all those folks for helping answer in the comments.
And I've been watching it. They're doing a great job answering those questions quickly, typing faster than we could speak.
Okay.
And I appreciate, I mean, listen, we appreciate all the questions. I mean, one of the reasons why we're doing this is I know there's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of misinformation around there. So please ask your questions in the chat box. We have people answer them, and we'll try to answer online as well. Okay.
Can you clarify hold harmless regarding EES and if teachers should be still collecting data?
So right now, teachers should be allowed to continue to finish up their EES if they can. We actually have that on our list of things that we're going to follow up and have further discussions in the coming weeks. Frankly, of all the things that we're trying to get clarification on, that was not at the very, very top. And so we anticipate we're going to get additional clarification for folks. But the hold harmless is that folks shouldn't be harmed by the fact that the closures have impacted the ability of the EES to either get completed or not. And so it really depends on where people are at in their EES process. We know we have folks out there that were done with all their observations and pretty much just had to have their final discussion with their principal, which could very easily happen virtually. We know that others may not be in that place. And so as we move forward, we're going to have additional conversations with the department about specific guidance related to EES.
Is there a possibility of requesting a tax break or funding from the DOE to pay for our home offices and the internet that we're needing to use at home for work?
That would be something that the legislature would have to pass, and legislature's not in session right now. That's not something we have discussed, but Corey, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it or any.
Again, so I mean, look, I understand that, you know, in this circumstance, a lot of teachers are having to use data, other things. If this is not something that you can provide, work with your administrator to be able to do it. We don't want any teachers to have to be digging into their own pockets. If there's something that you cannot provide, again, call your administrator on this question.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any specific updates for charter schools, or are they following all of the guidelines that we are following as DOE teachers?
That's a great question. There's actually one update specific to, I believe it was either Thursday or Friday, there was a charter commission meeting. So what is different for DOE from charter schools is that each charter within their charter has a specific agreement for how they're going to deliver instruction. And so we have some charters that are virtual, some that are hybrid models. We have some that are just face-to-face instruction. And so they could not actually transition to providing learning and enrichment opportunities online without going back and having the commission tell them that they could modify or change their delivery mechanism. And so what happened was the commission met, and they are allowing the charters during this closure time to utilize online methodology to provide enrichment opportunities. And so that is great because that gives them some flexibility within their charter. That does not mean, however, that they are doing that formalized fourth quarter instruction and trying to just go forward. To our understanding and knowledge, the superintendent, because of the emergency situation, still controls the opening or closure of the schools. And right now, all public schools, including charters, are closed through April 30th.
Okay. One teacher is reporting that their principal wants them to come to school to print in their classroom and photocopy packets in the teacher workroom and help hand out books to student families. Can you clarify our position on that?
So
It can't be required.
Okay, and I want to answer this. A lot of the questions we've been getting are dealing with specific principals, and for most part, a lot of our principals have been doing an amazing job being flexible with their teachers as well, trying to make this happen. And one of the things why we're doing this communication, and in fact, we know that principals are watching this probably too, is just try to be as clear as possible. And sometimes it just has to be a reminder, no one can be required to go on campus, okay?
The other thing that we have picked up is that because folks are anxious and worried, sometimes they are reading more into communication than is actually there. So I have seen, for example, communications from principals that have said, if you want to come to campus and make packets, this is how you can come to campus. If you don't want to come to campus, but you want to just drop something off at the office and we can distribute it for you, then this is what you can do. Or if you're not comfortable with any of that, call me and we'll discuss how we can make sure that there is that option. Because you do need to provide options for kids who don't have internet access. And so again, it goes back to that principle, but sometimes people are reading communications like that and they're taking it as, I am required to. Nobody should be required to come to the campus. Alternate arrangements should be made, and you should have a conversation with your principal if you're not comfortable with that. We're trying to meet everyone's needs. And frankly, we've got people on both sides. We've got people who are very anxious and don't want to leave their house at all. And we have other people who want to go into the campus to be able to make those copies. And so we're trying to find a way to address both sides of that. Other questions, Logan?
Yes, there are many more. Will this semester still count towards earning tenure, and will it still count towards retirement?
Yes, as long as you're on a paid status, and you are on a paid status and you are working, unless for some reason someone watching is on a long-term leave without pay. And then that's, if you're on leave without pay, you do not get service credit time, and you would generally not get tenure depending on how many days you're out this semester.
So just to be clear, because we get this question a lot, yes, you are getting paid, yes, you are working. And that's why when it comes to questions about calling parents or dealing with creating enrichment activities, even providing grades, all of these are normal duties while we are getting paid and we are working.
Teachers are asking for guidance regarding having more than one student in a virtual meeting, and if there are concerns with recording students and lessons via Zoom or WebEx for teachers who are working on national board certification.
So
I don't have an answer to that, Corey. Maybe I can try to double check.
One of the questions is, I you know, believe it or not, I'm trying to renew my national board right at this time too. And national board did send out a letter trying to accommodate teachers during this time as well. And Logan, if you want to jump in, I'm sure you would know about this as well. The thing is, you cannot keep take attendance of your students, because and this is the equity issue, is not all children may have access to a computer or internet, and we didn't think any child should be penalized because their family could not afford that. Or you may have a family of 4 kids and they all have to go online and they can't all share it at the same time. So that's why, as you cannot require attendance of students, you can provide the access but not penalize. And Logan, is there anything you want to jump in about the
Okay,
national board?
wait. I just want to double check. But Logan, the question is about, is it okay to have more than one kid in a virtual meeting room, correct?
It's a two-part question, yes.
Yeah.
One person's question is, is it okay to have more than one person in the room with them?
Sorry. Yes. Okay. To that question.
Well, no, wait.
You can have more than one student in there.
We have not asked that question, and I will ask it to get confirmation from the department. We haven't specifically asked that question of the department. You can ask your principal, though, in the meantime, but I have nothing that indicates you can't. And the recording, I don't know the answer to that, so we will find out. Yeah, because the recording, it is a whole nother conversation. So we need to get clarification on that.
Do teachers need to hold virtual meetings to revise IEPs to adjust the minutes?
I don't believe so. I believe right now you're supposed to hold what you can, and then when all of the closures are over, then there'll be necessary changes as needed. But I don't want you guys to quote us on that. You need to go back and look at the memos, and you need to ask your principal for guidance in regards to that.
Specifically, I don't think the memo specifically addressed that specific issue.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's why maybe that's, and look, and I think we're getting more information, but just as these last two questions have shown, there's a lot of things we still don't know. And so when these questions come up, we've literally been compiling them, and we've been asking the department, and these are just, for everyone, this is a whole new time and we're trying to adjust. So this is something we'll try to ask and follow up on.
Yep. I'm writing that all down. I've got a long list right now.
Are teachers required to provide enrichment activities for students that have no internet access?
Yes.
Are we still going to get the 21 hours and 3 credits for this school year?
Yes. You may have to sit on a PD hour of 21 hours, but yes. And there is language in the agreement with the superintendent that covers that.
Andy, I want to ask a question myself, because I remember your answer. I want to be clear, because if a teacher provides an enrichment activity that is completely online, are they required to also provide a packet that's offline?
They need to provide equity of opportunities. It doesn't have to be the exact same lesson, but they need to provide equity of having the opportunity to do enrichment. So if you're teaching item A, you don't have to do that exact same lesson in a packet, but you do need to provide a learning and an enrichment activity for every kid. So if you know that they don't have online, they need to have an opportunity to do something else. It doesn't have to be the exact same enrichment, but something else.
Okay.
Will this go on beyond April 30th?
Let me get out my crystal ball.
I think
Corey?
that's that everyone's asking, you know.
I don't know.
And I think one of the things that all I can say is that HSTA will continue to advocate that when the school should open is when we can make sure that it's a safe and healthy environment. And I think everyone's watching this right now, what's going on around the world, and that's just the question we don't have an answer for right now.
We don't know.
What can our school level leaders do to support their bargaining unit 5 members?
Well, I think right now, one of the great things is that those of you who are watching and being able to answer these questions and work with your principals. As much as everyone is trying to inform, again, a lot of the complaints we get is sometimes when people are not following the rules carefully or try to ask for something. And so I want to say this because I've been watching the post too. I mean, this is why we have a union. It's not just to do sometimes outside things, but also just to be able to advocate for our members inside of our schools. And this is why when we've been working with the Department of Education, you know, we've been trying to advocate for our KK as well. And our school level leaders, we need you at our schools to be able to work with your principals to make sure that there are certain rules that are followed that to the agreement that we have with the DOE.
Can we be forced to make the resources as a grade level instead of making resources for our class individually?
There was no agreement that that could be done. Each teacher needs to determine what's going to work for them. I will note for some people though, as a grade level, that might be easier for you folks work-wise, but that's not something that should be happening.
Do we need to document the 7-hour day?
We are in discussions right now about the DOE is trying to come up with a sign-in system, but you should not be asked, for example, to sign in at exactly 8 o'clock and sign out at 3 o'clock. Your contract allows that you can be required to sign in once a day. It doesn't specify a specific time. The DOE right now is trying to figure out how to do that. So I've heard a couple of schools have maybe come up with a system that you submit like a Google form or something, but beyond that, no, you don't need to document. You don't need to, you're not an attorney. You're not taking down hours and having to bill it or something. You are working remotely, period. At some point, there may be an ask to sign in once a day virtually, and we'll figure out how that's going to happen and we'll let you know.
Can someone define harmless? How far does that reach?
Depends on what we're talking about. So without getting more specific,
It depends if it's doing teacher or student, too.
Yeah.
I believe it was in the hold harmless for EES when it came up.
And as I said, we're working on getting more details for that for people.
Okay.
Anything else, Logan?
Many of our other questions are site specific. Oh, are emergency hires getting paid now like teachers are?
Emergency hire, if it's folks with a teaching contract, emergency hires, yes, they're getting paid just like everybody else. They're expected to do the same work that everyone else is doing. They're on contract.
And I do also believe that there are probably some subs that are also working for teachers that were on leave also.
Okay, so are we?
I have one final question.
I was going to say we're almost at 5. So yes, ma'am.
How has this situation shown the importance of a union?
Corey, you better take that.
I'll take that one. That's what I've been saying. Pointing out Andy's work here, and we have our whole communication staff, and we have all of our chapter presidents been working. You never know when you're going to need a union, and as a union, as I said before, we've been advocating not just for our teachers but also for our keiki. And there are some states where teachers are not getting paid. There are some places where they're trying to require that all students get grades, even if they don't have access to computers. And throughout this, we've been able to advocate for our members, and we have thousands of volunteers who are advocating at school levels as well. And so that's, all important. And when this is over, we're also going to need to stick together as a union. And so it's good that all of us are together. I love all the work that you folks are doing. I really appreciate even that you were able to take on a Sunday afternoon and join us, because you just want to advocate for, your schools too. And, brings tears to my eyes how many of you talked about your keiki and your students and all that you're trying to do and advocate for them too. So it's really great that we're together as a union, even during the stressful time for you. It's important that we stick together.
All right, so I think we are at a closing time. I want to remind folks that if you are watching this archived, that you can still reach out to us on our hsta.org page and contact us through the page, and we will get back to you. You can also reach out to your local school level leader at your building or school site, or your UNISERV director. Our staff continues to work remotely, just like you folks are, and we are following up as needed and as appropriate with folks.
Can I just jump in there, Andy? I want to say one thing, because I really want to shout out to our UNISERVs too, who have been working their hearts out there, because they've been taking a lot of these questions and answering them and advocating for you as well. And that's another great reason for the union, because I've been watching this too. So I want to give a shout out to them as well.
Thank you. I think they'll appreciate that. We would encourage you to continue to make sure you're signed up for our email list, to make sure that you're looking at our webpage. And in closing, we just wanted to also acknowledge that what all of you are being asked to do is really not humanly possible, right? What we're being asked to do is just unbelievable. And it is understandable that as we go through this, things might fall to the wayside and decisions are going to have to be made to maybe just not do certain things because you're just not going to be able to do it from a distance. It's a really, really difficult and fast transition to expect folks who are in the classroom with students day to day to immediately transition to doing all this work from a distance, whether it's via packets or virtual or otherwise. And many of us, on top of that, are dealing with our own kids at home. I've got my son across the way, and I'm having to deal with him and make sure that he's doing his work. And we have our own families to take care of. And that comes on top of some of us having to deal with family members who are considered essential workers or family members who have lost their job. And so we recognize that it's a really, really stressful time right now. And you just got to do the best that you can. We are all needing to change our expectations of ourselves, of others, and have flexibility and compassion for not only each other, but for our students and for the parents that are working with those kids. We're in it together, and try to stay well. Make sure that you're reaching out and staying connected with your colleagues. I'm hearing some great ideas out there where people are having, like their own sort of little grade level get-togethers and things virtually, and that's really, really important. And as you know, we're going to continue to be here for you folks. Our leaders and our staff are continuing to provide the most up-to-date information and support you during this difficult time. I want to just give a special shout out to our state president, Corey Rosenlee, our officers, Logan and Osa. We have been on the phone for hours every day, on the video conference every day, just trying to meet the needs for you folks. And they're doing a fantastic job advocating for you folks throughout this difficult time. So Corey, I don't know if you have anything to close with.
Just final words. First of all, I'd like to thank Andrea Eshelman, our Deputy Executive Director here. She's a rock star. And a lot of the work that's being done to advocate, she's been doing this. Also, thank you to our communications team. We have a great communications team that have been working really hard, long hours. I mean, here we are on a Sunday, and they're working too to make sure that we can get out information to you. And that's Kyoki Kerr, Terry Inafuku, and Chris Schubert, who's all working behind the scenes right now to make this happen. Also want to thank our Vice President, Osa Tui, and our Secretary Treasurer, Logan Okita, who have been working on, we've been probably every night trying to communicate, trying to get this stuff done. And this is a whole team effort. I want to thank them on their hard work. I do want to address, we've been getting questions about a separate SpEd Q&A. And this is something that we've been sharing with our chapter presidents. Again, a shout out to all of our chapter presidents that have been working with you. But sometimes the best thing to do is to look at the memos that we've been sharing and try to get the information out there. We try to clarify as best as we can, but this is a new world for not HSTA, but also for the DOE. And there's sometimes we cannot provide every answer that people would like and the clarity that you need. And that's just because everyone is going through something new. Work with your administrators to try to get those questions answered. Look at the memos from the DOE. And if you're still not, you can go to HSTA and try to fill out the questions, and we'll try to get back to you and in touch with you as well to try to answer some of those questions. With that, then, I want to thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate you spending the time and getting this information out to you, and all the comments and nice words that you guys have been saying. We've been following it as well. We really appreciate it as well. And thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Vicky and Inga, too, for their great sign language interpreting. Thank you.